Hello everyone. So today I'm going to talk about something that's quite personal. It's something that I have lived with for my entire life. And only now do I kind of feel ready to put it out there as kind of like an expression of how this particular issue manifests itself in my life. What we're going to talk about today is ADHD, right? And I have officially diagnosed ADHD. In fact, when I went to speak to a psychiatrist and I told her what my current situation was, that I ran two businesses at the time, she told me it was an absolute miracle that I was able to keep my shit together and run a business, given how severe the hyperactivity in my mind was. No word of a lie. And only over the last couple of years have I really been able to get it in check. It's still something I live with. It's still something that I see the consequences of every single day. But I wanted to talk to everyone about it today because I feel like a large proportion of adults will now just assume they have ADHD. And in actual fact, the numbers are only around about 2 to 5%. And a lot of adults think they've got ADHD because they've spent too much time scrolling TikTok, or because they have ended up with a vape addiction, or they're going out all the time and they feel like they're just really eccentric and bubbly people. That is not how ADHD works, right? It is genetic. You have had it since you have been a child, and sometimes it only starts to manifest itself in ways that are congruent with the typical kind of view of ADHD as you become older. It really pisses me off when I see people tell me they've got it, or when I speak to people about my diagnosis and they go, everyone's got a little bit of ADHD. That's not the case. What's happening with those people is that they are unmotivated and undisciplined, and they are allowing certain things to take over their life, and they've ended up falling down a very, very sticky route. Now, I'm sure a few of the people who say they've got it have got it. I'm not here to gaslight anyone or whatever, but this is a serious condition. And if you read about some of the risk factors for ADHD, like there's a massive increased risk of suicide when you have ADHD. There's a massive increased risk of drug addiction, which I obviously fell into. There is a huge risk of ruining relationships, and you have a 50% higher chance of ending up in jail. It's really serious, and people see it as a kind of like a lifestyle quirk. And honestly, it's something I suffered really badly with, to the point that I was driven to an addiction. I was smoking a ridiculous amount of weed, doing dabs, extracts, eating edibles on a daily basis, just because I felt I couldn't escape the level of excitement that was going on in my mind. And it wasn't always positive excitement. It was thoughts that would spiral out of control. It was having strong emotional urges and impulses to do things. I would often get an idea in my head and become completely fixated by it and spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds on something, only to then never use it again, just because I had this strong emotional impulse that I could not get rid of until I'd actually went through and completed what I was thinking of. The camera I'm filming this on right now was a result of me getting stuck in a spiral of gadgets that I wanted to buy, and I then spent 2 or 3 weeks watching YouTube videos of every single possible use case for the camera, and then went and bought it. And this one actually turned out to be a good investment because it's what I film all of me content on. But my ADHD started when I was a kid, and it was characterized by two things: a lot of anger and compulsive lying. And this is a bit of a hard thing for me to talk about on camera because it doesn't really paint me in a good light. But like when I would say from about 9 to when I was about maybe 15, I would incessantly lie about a lot of things. And it wasn't until I spoke to a therapist that they explained that when you create an elaborate lie and you get someone to believe it, it can give you a sense of achievement, and it can give you the little bit of the dopamine hit that you're craving. And it also helps to reinforce a more positive identity around yourself. So what I was essentially doing was going out into the world and trying to create an identity that was different to mine, because I didn't really have an understanding of what was going on in my head, and I couldn't really accept it. And I wanted life to seem like it was a lot more enthralling and exhilarating than what it actually was. And when I got to about 16, I realised I kind of had this like premonition, this epiphany of what I was doing, and I was like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like, this is a really weird way to live. And I would often get like caught up in these lies quite a lot, to my parents, to my friends, and I'd end up backtracking, and it honestly just like it made people just think that I was just bullshitting all the time, because it was. And I got to about 16, 17, I actually got awarded in my school prom the biggest bullshitter award, believe it or not, in the yearbook. I've still got that to this day, and I remember seeing that written down on paper, and I was like, this has to like stop, this is not cool. And over the next few years, I ended up going to university, getting a degree, and then coming out of university and basically embarking on what was like a multiple year numbing side quest, I'd like to call it. I remember being about 16 or 17 and trying to sneak a backpack full of Coronas to one of my mates and being caught by my mum. And I remember smoking joints in my bedroom at night out of the window, and I actually collapsed because I'd also taken about 12 paracetamol that day because I had a cold, only to wake up and see that my mum and dad were standing over me and asking me why there was a lighter on my bed, for me to just tell them that I'd just burnt an incense and my whole room absolutely stunk of weed. And it's funny to look back at it now, but really it's quite sad, like that I felt that I had to do all of these things. I had to drink to excess, I had to smoke to excess, just in order to feel a little bit of normality. And, you know, I had to take a lot of depressants to slow the mind down and slow the thought processes down that were going on in my head. And these emotional impulses have only really grown stronger as I've went through life. But I've now actually started to hone them in a little bit and use them for good. And I think for years I lent on ADHD as an excuse as to why I was the way I was, and I became wrapped up in the identity of I've got ADHD and that's that, this is how I am and there's nothing I can do to change it. And that's why I smoked weed for so long, is because I convinced myself that this is helping me, I am the pothead friend, and I really can't imagine a life of sobriety, a life of not being stoned all the time, because I actually really couldn't fathom living with the thoughts that go on in my head, if I'm totally honest. I wasn't depressed, I don't think. I'm not saying that. I wasn't psychotic, I wasn't any of those things, but I really needed an escape. And to this day, I've still got those traits, right? And outwardly, you might see me as someone with a successful business, who's been, you know, quite successful athletically, who can write pretty well because I practice it quite a lot. And I always get told that I am one of the most organised people that people have ever met. And when people tell me that, it is an affront to my identity, because I cannot see it that way. And I remember listening to a book on ADHD, and one thing he said really, really resonated with me. The guy was like, do you ever feel massively disorganised but seem like the most organised person in the world to everyone else? And I was like, yeah. And he went on to explain that basically when we have those feelings, people with ADHD can then begin to like micromanage their levels of organisation. They can start really sticking to a calendar, making sure that everything's done on time and look like they're really, really productive. But actually that comes at a massive, massive cost of energy. It takes a lot of resilience and mental energy just for me to stay what I think is at a normal level of organisation. And that started to become quite a drain on me and on my resources as well. And the real turning point for me, and I know a lot of people with ADHD are told to do this, they're told to meditate, to journal, they're told to use the latest productivity app or whatever, and you try to do it, it just doesn't work. But the real turning point for me was really reframing my identity. And I think a big change for me was when I stopped smoking weed. I remember I binned absolutely all, like I had vaporizers, I had hundreds of lighters, I had bongs, I had every kind of rolling paper imaginable. Honest to God, hundreds and hundreds of pounds of weed smoking kit. Like, I used to literally work for me mate who was essentially running a paraphernalia site on Amazon, and so I would take all this stuff home and the house was just absolutely full of it, trays, all kinds. And I remember binning all of that and just being like, this is not me. I'm not a weed smoker. Like, that's it. I'm done with it. And it's been, about 32, 33 months now. Still not touched it. Don't get me wrong, I get the odd urge. Sometimes it comes back. Sometimes I see someone else doing it. It's a sunny day, and I'm like, that looks fucking boss, because it was. But it's just not my identity anymore. And I realised after making that massive identity shift, where really I just decided myself that that wasn't going to resonate with me anymore, and I actually broke free of something that was crippling. I started to look at my ADHD and thinking, well, there's lots of successful people with ADHD. Why am I using it as an excuse? Why am I leaning into it so hard? And so I started to look at all the positives. And there's plenty of them when you've got ADHD. Like, yes, you might start a lot of tasks and not finish them. Yes, you might have strong emotional impulses. But for me, because my brain is so hyperactive, it actually allows me to think of a lot of business ideas, and it makes me really, really creative. It's the reason I can sit down and write a full-length email every day. It's the reason I can continue to film content all the time. It's because I essentially feel like my brain works at 140% all the time. I think it's part of the reason I'm able to speak quite well. Like, pretty much every video I ever film is in one take, because my mind is working so fast that it's able to just produce the words that I need. Same with any of the business ventures I've had as well. I'm very, very quick to implement ideas, and I think that's a massive positive in business. Also in training, I find a lot of stimulation from being in the trenches with runs, with lifting and stuff like that, and that's clearly helped me run 3 marathons and powerlift a big total, and it's kept me in the gym for the last decade. Just having that strong emotional impulse to train and like to go and feel something, I think has been a massive, massive benefit for me. And actually doing things like the daily email and the journal and the meditating, it was always stuff I told myself I couldn't do and I couldn't stick to because I was so disorganized. And I would wake up and kind of just let my mind take me where it wanted to take me, no matter what that was. A couple of years ago, it was waking up at 6 in the morning to smoke a joint and have a coffee, and then go on a bike ride and smoke another joint, and then come back and complete all my work for Barclays when I work for them in an hour, and then just sit off for the rest of the day getting stoned. Like, to be fair, in certain areas, it has worked quite well for me. And now I'm really starting to channel it into the productivity side of things. Yes, I'm still very, very forgetful. Sometimes clients will say, remember, I need to change this date next week, and I will still turn up, even though I had the best intention of putting it in my calendar. I'll turn up and they won't be there. There will be times where I will forget to do a lot of things in my business. I do eventually always come back to them, because I always have the external pressure of, shit, people are paying me here, like, I need to make sure I'm on the ball. And even right now, like, I feel like this is probably a bit of a vulnerable position to put myself in, because I never know what the response is going to be like when I am offering a premium coaching service. Sometimes you don't want to hear that your coach is suffering from a mental disorder, because call it what it is. That's what it is. It's a disorder. It affects multiple areas of your life. But for the most part, pretty much everyone I've ever trained has had overwhelmingly positive things to say about the service that I provide. And so it doesn't seem to be affecting business negatively too much. But the reason I wanted to make this video is because if you have ever felt the way that I felt growing up, or if you feel that way now, the chances are that you might have ADHD. You don't have it just because you are sat there scrolling. You don't have it because you can't spend 5 minutes without sucking an elf bar. Like, that's not ADHD, right? ADHD can manifest itself in many different ways. And the only way to understand if you have it is to go and speak to a psychiatrist. There is little point in self-diagnosis. To be fair, I did self-diagnose at first until I went to see someone, and then they kind of affirmed what I knew was already going on. But I think sometimes if you self-diagnose yourself with something that you might not even have, like, that can affect your life in ways that is unimaginable, to be honest. Like, it completely changed the trajectory of your life and of your identity and of how you think about yourself. So if you do feel like you've got it, go and speak to a professional. If you are offered medication and you think that is going to work well for you, please take it. There's a lot of negative sentiment about ADHD meds, and it's part of the reason I've never actually went and got medicated, but the more research that I've done about it, the more I'm starting to think it could be a viable option. I am just scared of it turning off some of the things that are working quite well for me, so I've never felt the need to take it. But over the last few months, I felt maybe it might be a good idea to experiment with it at least and see whether it works for me or not. But I think it is something you can get in control of to a degree. It is still going to govern your life. I still drink 6 or 7 double espressos per day because I want the dopamine hit of feeling like I'm stimulated and like I'm alert and like I can get shit done and like I can lift heavy stuff in the gym. So that's still a work in progress, but through meditation and mindfulness and introspection and reading and really trying to understand who I am as a person, what makes me tick and what holds me back, I've been able to get somewhat of a grasp on it. Even the reading thing, like I always told myself I could never read a book because I would literally read the book and I would read the same page over and over and over again, or I would read through 6 pages and then realise I actually have no idea what I've just read because I was thinking about that video I need to film, or I was thinking about this or thinking about that. My attention span was so poor, and it still can be poor, but attention can be trained with meditation, okay? Like it's like anything, the mind is like a muscle and you can reprogram it essentially. You can't get rid of ADHD, you can't get rid of OCD. These things are there, your brain is wired differently, that's just how it is, but you can learn to live with these things as well. So yeah, I just thought I wanted to maybe make a video, not just for me and not just for other people, but so maybe the people who I know or who are in my life can refer back to it to get an understanding of how my mind works sometimes. So yeah, maybe this isn't as much to do with training or coaching per se, but it did inspire me to create something in my business called the frame shift system, because I've been that person who'd been dogged down by multiple different identities. The identity of being a pothead, of being a weed smoker, of being the fun person who always says yes. And I managed to turn all of them things around simply by doing a lot of hard work on my identity and of training my attention and of becoming more aware of who I was. And it's a lot of work and I'm a work in progress, and it cost me a lot of money in therapy. It cost me a lot of time and energy in the effort to actually do it and make that change. But the change will never happen unless you're the person who is the impetus for that change. You need to be that person. You need to be willing to change and not just succumb to your old identity. So yeah, if you've got this far, thanks for listening. Hopefully some of you out there resonate with this. If not, fine. This was a nice little journal and exercise for me anyway. So yeah, I'll catch you on the next one.